Welcome to The Landscape, George Smith Partners podcast.
Welcome to The Landscape. This is George Smith Partners podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, but first, a reminder, go check out our website, gspartners.com. And on that website, you can sign up for FinFacts, our newsletter. Every week, our newsletter comes out with insights about the market, where rates are going, recent deals we've completed, and we have a transparent ethos at our company. So in our newsletter, we talk a lot about details of deals, how they got done, what the rates were, structure, deal structure. So it's a very informative newsletter. I highly recommend it. We're joined here today by one of my best friends, Mr. Matt Savarick. Matt is the CEO of Vibe DTM, which is a company that helps business-to-business companies build AI sales tool systems to help book better meetings, build a better pipeline, and help upskill the leadership of the companies to adapt to the changes of AI. Vibe DTM is working with companies between 10 and 100 million in revenue, want more pipeline without hiring more people. Before this, Matt spent 15 years at companies like Headspace, Talkspace, and Let's Get Checked, scaling sales teams from early stage to over 100 million in sales. Matt has studied neuroscience, which he treats like sales, and he believes that sales is not a guessing game. So, Matt, we're in a very rapidly changing world.
Yep.
Every single day, I see, dozens of new interesting things on X that upend entire industries, change, sales processes, change the way people learn things. How are you thinking about AI in sales today?
Yeah. Well, good to see you here. Appreciate you having me. So I think the first thing to say is we're kind of all in this together, right? I mean, you presented this as if I have some outsized knowledge here. I think the thing that I benefit from is just being a sales guy and doing this for almost 2 decades. So to answer your question directly, it's almost like we have to figure out what is timeless. Like, what are the things that will never go away? So, I talk about this a lot. Events are not going away. The utility to press someone's flesh and hear a speaker and break bread with somebody, grab a beer or a cup of tea with them, I think that will forever remain. Humans are social mammals, so that's important. On the other side, there are timely things that I have 2 analogies for you that we kind of have to keep top of mind, right? So one would be, I don't think the actual work will change that meaningfully. It's just who does some of the work. So said differently, I think the game is increasingly like humans will become the bookends of the work, and AI or a robot will handle the messy middle. So as an example, everyone talks about prompting, which is critical. You need to direct these systems in a way with accurate instructions, just like you would a new hire or a team member or a child. And then there's still this human in the loop at the end. So, the bookends are critical, but stitching some of these things together, gathering the information, writing some of the copy. And the analogy that always works for me is I have 2 young kids, a 7-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy. If I tell them to clean up the playroom, their head nearly pops off. If I invite them to start to put things in piles, hey, can you put the Barbies in a pile? Can you put the books in a pile? It seems like they can really understand that direction. And it's almost like AI, at least in the current state, this might change next week, but the current state, you kind of need to tell it what piles to put things into. And then from there, a human would step in and iterate. So I think that's the first analogy that really makes sense, this idea of the bookends. And then one other thing that's important, yes, if you read X and any of these platforms, it's tough to discern what is like the clay bros, the clickbait stuff where it's like, I just automated my entire life with Moltbot, right? Which to me, those things they're likely possible on the bleeding edge, but we're years away from pushing a magic button and us being on a hammock somewhere and an AI runs the entire show. I still think that's pretty far off, 3 to 5 years away. The analogy that makes a lot of sense, at least for sales, and I'd love to hear your perspective, is in the same way Waymo wasn't reinventing roads, right? The cars that Waymo is building, they're still driving on the same roads that we know. So I think the most clear analogy would be, and we've seen this with Claude Cowork, we've seen this with Manus, we've seen this, X released, what was it called? Macro Hard, which, is maybe their iteration of this kind of first autonomous consumer grade technology. But we're still going to communicate on email. We're still going to communicate on phone. We're still going to communicate on LinkedIn and text. So the roadways are the same. The robot assisted directives or driving will change. I don't know if that's a helpful analogy, but I'm very visual, so some of these things help me make sense of the world.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've put in a few presentations is that the way I think about it, humans are end to end, and AI today is middle to middle.
Nice.
So,
yep.
It's sort of a similar concept to what you were describing.
Yeah.
Most of our clients are real estate sponsors and developers running smaller companies, trying to build pipeline. Are there any industries that you see kind of immune to this? Like, where do you think the world is moving?
Oh gosh, the immune question. I think it's going to be a while. Although we've seen Tesla and Figure, right? They have robots in the house picking up wine glasses and cleaning things. I think the Roomba will be around for some time as long as the cameras aren't hacked. But I think this idea of a robot that's safe and in home is probably pretty far off. So I think the trades seem to be downside protected. What I would say is, it's kind of entered the zeitgeist where you see what happened this week. Block letting go of 40+% of folks. And I think what was said was that the org chart has changed, has morphed. It's becoming a little bit flatter. So you don't need so much hierarchy. But I still think that's what's seen. There's a whole world of innovation of the unseen. So I'm also, me, I'm a pretty optimistic guy. So I think I'm hopeful that even though, yes, 40% of folks were let go, I know many of them, they're brilliant and capable. There are endless opportunities elsewhere, I think, for those folks. So I do think there's probably a reckoning in white collar in a way. Who knows if it's, I've seen numbers up to 50%. But I think that's only talking about what is known or what's seen. We have no idea what innovation is going to come tomorrow. So I'm hopeful that humans will still be doing work and will still want to meet one another, and commerce will ensue thereafter. So yeah, I don't know about the immune question, but I would say for small businesses, it gives me great hope that, for me, I was trained in the enterprise, right? I benefited from working at Fortune 100s. And then even when I worked at smaller companies where there was 100 or so people, they were all venture or private equity backed. So we always had this war chest of tens of millions of dollars to go build what I would call go-to-market motion. So go-to-market, at least in my term, my thinking would be sales, marketing, ops to help, you might call it pre-sales or sales or business development. All of those things are the same. Now I think just the cost of credits alone have dropped 280x over the past 36 months. So I think the convergence of three things gives me great hope for businesses big and small. Number one, the cost is accessible to almost everybody. So the floor has fallen out on the pricing and the cost. Number two, I think there's the quality and safety asterisks, right? I know I've seen all sorts of stuff where maybe some of these things are not the highest quality or not that safe, but assuming that they are kind of above board, that the quality and safety, so the efficacy is good enough to begin to iterate with these things. Maybe we're 1 or 2 quarters away from really trusting this as a second brain. And then the third piece is natural language. Not that Evan and I, y'all don't know this, but what we talk about often is us getting into coding in a way. When I say coding, we're kind of using natural language to prompt Claude Code or Grok, et cetera, to go code something or create something. So that idea, that's like what we call in tech vibe coding, meaning you prompt the robot to go conduct something. It works on, it stitches whatever 50 different tasks together and then comes back with a finished product, and you iterate with natural language from there. The other thing that's really important, aside from a normie like me being able to interact, or a non-tech person being able to interact with an AI bot, is that natural language allows them to also communicate with each other. So now, it's not necessarily their programming language where they're wedded to, and then you need someone to translate that. It's almost English or natural language has become this universal language so that robots can interact. So the convergence of those three things, the accessibility is there because of cost, the quality and safety is there, and then the ability for us to interact with AI and AI to interact with itself seems to be a really special setup for businesses big and small.
So let's get really specific.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff floating around on the internet. I know that companies, every company is scrambling to figure out, how to generate leverage, operating leverage using AI. You're talking with dozens of companies, Matt, across like this mid-size scale, right? 10 to 100 million is sort of your target client for your company. So tell us, let's look at the scale. Where is the rubber meeting the road with companies? Like, what specific things are you seeing? I mean, I can tell you things that we see in our business,
Sure.
but I want to hear, from you, what are you seeing where people are truly generating operating leverage with AI today?
Yeah. Let me give you an example that makes a lot of sense in my kind of Neanderthal sales brain, and then we can extrapolate from there. So one of the highest leverage things that you can do, at least for building a pipeline, is double the amount of qualified opportunities, right? So like if all else is held constant, if you double the top of the funnel or qualified opportunities, then you would double your revenue, right? Just for a simple proxy. So how would you do that? Let's say I was hired at Headspace as an example, and I was given a war chest of money. I mean, some budget, but it was really open-ended. What was the first thing that I would do? I would go, I mean, I had to carry the bag or fill the funnel myself. But what I would do, I would hire sales individuals, I'd hire marketing individuals and ops people, because those were very specialized things. And then if I wanted to, like, let's say for, I don't know what you call them in your world, but business development professionals or sales development professionals or SDR, BDR, openers, setters, they're all the same thing, right? They're not necessarily
Right.
the closer, but they're the opener. And they're usually good, assuming this is a B2B motion, they're usually good for between 10 and 20 net new qualified leads a month. So I'll make the math simple. So let's say for each SDR or BDR that I hire that's fully ramped, they can fill the funnel with 10 opportunities.
Right.
Well, if I wanted to 10x the pipeline, I would need to hire 10 folks.
Right.
That is not necessarily the case anymore, right? So I hope that analogy is simple. But what happens with that person? What do? They would do let's say someone's trying to sell to you. I'm sure you get endless calls and texts and LinkedIn messages and emails every single day that might feel like spam at some point. But I believe, and you push me back, but push back a bit. But I believe that some percentage will either, maybe it won't get a meeting with you, but it will provide a stepping stone. So that person, maybe they see you speak at an event, they might then come shake your hand, reference that email, and that might then be a stepping stone to the next potential opportunity, right? So I think it's much more of a game of loosening the proverbial pickle jar. So what would that person do if they wanted to get in front of you? They'd need to do some research. They'd need to kind of scour the internet for digital breadcrumbs. They would need to put together an account plan. What is access? What is GSP, et cetera, right? To really understand your business, and then start to stitch together, we'll call it like a 21-day cadence to reach out. So most salespeople are using phone, and on phone, you can make a phone call, you can send a text, you can leave a voicemail. There are a couple different motions. On email, really, you can just send an email. But with an email, there's all sorts of stuff that you can do. You can choose to change the subject line. You can choose to change the offer. You can play with the PS. Do you put a link in there which tanks deliverability? But if someone clicks on it, there's a better opportunity. So there's all sorts of things that you can do to test. And then the third option, which I'm a fan of, is LinkedIn. DM, comment, reach out, etc. So one salesperson, they would need to do all of those things just to try to get in front of you. Now, I'm not saying that we have a magical robot and you push a button and all this symphony and orchestra of things happen, but a lot of those things can be now supported by AI. So on the research side, you can do deep research on Evan Kinne right now, and I'm sure it would produce something pretty darn thoughtful, at least so they can wrap their arms around who you are, what are you up to, where did you come from, maybe some commonalities. In terms of the outreach side, at least, so let's say we're not necessarily orchestrating those things, but even if we're doing them manually, it would still be helpful to have AI assess what's working and stress tests, like ABC test the subject line. Should I call Evan first and then let him know that I'm going to reach out on LinkedIn? Should I just show up on his profile first? Should I send him a thoughtful article that I sourced for him? Should I write him a handwritten note? So all these things, at some point you have a pile of data and you need to say, well, wait a second, where are the insights from all of these activities? And then lastly, how do you do that all the time where you can keep reinforcing this learning loop so it would get smarter, and over time it would understand, well, how do we reach out to Evan or folks who are like Evan? Where do they congregate? Where do they hang out? Who are people that they trust? So all of those different things are well supported by AI, whether it's the research, whether it's the outreach, whether it's the insights. Those are distinct motions, and at least for sales can be pretty well supported using AI.
Yeah. So it's leverage. Another thing is, I heard that, I don't know if this is true or not, but, it was floating around on the internet the other day that Anthropic's entire broad-based marketing was handled by one single person, and they're a, $380 billion company. That is an incredible amount of leverage, running hundreds of ads across all the platforms. I think just switching gears here, Matt, let's go back to the human element. So you've mentioned to me in the past some data on, or a study that maybe Google did on the number of touches it takes to make a sale, and across different platforms and in different mediums. I mean, at the end of the day, like we were talking about earlier, if AI is end-to-end, humans are end-to-end and AI is middle-to-middle, in our business, the commercial real estate business, I feel like our business is highly relationship motivated, relationship centric. The human element of trust is paramount. So let's juxtapose, this conversation that we're having right now with that human element within the commercial real estate space, whether you're trying to get a deal done or find a new deal, et cetera, with the modern landscape of digital, the modern digital landscape. So, can we touch on that really quick?
Let's do that.
On the number of touch points. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you said the key word, which is trust. And I think a lot of people over-index on being liked. Honestly, in a business context, that might come in time, right? But that's much more of a game of proof instead of promise. I think you like somebody because they did a good job, they set proper expectations, they supported you, they delivered. So I think trust really comes from, at least I think the study that you're referencing, Google said, and this is not only for B2B, this is like, how does a brand build trust? So much so that someone will click or buy or spend time or read. And they came up with this formula, which was 7-11-4. 7 hours of exposure to a brand or a person, and that could be synchronous or asynchronous. So this is why, people say, like, a podcast, why is that so? Even if you have a small viewership, why does that matter? You feel like you're in the living room with them, or you feel like you're in the office with them. So 7 hours of exposure. So for someone who's maybe not thinking in the media, from the media frame, it kind of takes that much time, whether you have a couple meetings with somebody, You send them some, white papers or a pitch or proposal. They're thinking of you when they present this to their, to their board or their team, et cetera. So 7 hours seems to be the cumulative amount for both like an interaction like this where we're actually talking. And then if I send you something thoughtful and you read it, I'm still like appended to that. So that's the 7. 11 different touch points. This just goes to show you how long I've been doing this. You were probably trained the same. It used to take 4 touch points to get someone's attention, right? Now they say like 11. So it's like 7 hours of cumulative exposure, 11 different touch points. And then the 4 is across 4 different mediums or channels. So that's where, some people say, I hear all the time from business development folks, they might say, well, I'm a relationship person. I have to meet the person in person, which is good. That's the way you want to meet someone. But maybe someone doesn't want that. Maybe they're introverted. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're not going to participate. Maybe they would appreciate an email from you. Maybe they would appreciate a voice note or a handwritten note. So, the channels, it's not so much us figuring out what channels we want to play on. It's like we need to deliver the right message to the right person at the right time on the right channel. And then the last piece is with the right offer. So when I say offer, I don't mean like, hey, buy my stuff for a limited time only, this exploding. That's offer. I'm saying it's much more like a call to action. Hey, do you want to, I'm hosting a omakase dinner, at this upcoming conference. I'd love for you to join me. Or, hey, I here's a newspaper clipping. I thought of you, and I send that to you in the snail mail. So like that would be the proverbial offer, which is offer is not the right term, but it's the one that we use. I think of it like a bid for attention. And it's been so long since I dated, but this anytime I say this to anybody, they understand it, right? Because I think they believe that sales is like an art. And I think it's actually much more of a science where, I've told you the story, and I don't know if the audience knows your story, how you met your wife or how you kind of courted her or courted each other. But it would be impossible for us to perfectly manicure the exact plays that we were going to run to get to the first date. So I sent flowers to my wife's work. I burned a CD for her. A CD is a compact disc.
Man. What's that?
Burned a CD. Yeah, right. I wrote a handwritten note. I invited her on several dates, and she said no. So it's very similar to this. We need to figure out how to meet somebody on their turf. Right. And then be curious enough to invite them on the potential journey with us, whatever that might mean.
Interesting. So 7-11-4. You think it holds up? So
I think it holds up.
Yeah, but my only question is, with a high trust business, which of those 4 elements do you have to lean on the most? Obviously, I think it's the personal relationship and building trust.
Yes. Cumulative time, for sure.
Cumulative time.
Well, let me share one more kind of quantitative frame that's helpful. And again, these are just gentle frames to get you to think about the volume necessary to build trust, right? So a lot of people say, I met with Bob one time and like he didn't buy my thing. It's like that's just not how it works, right? But that would work for, and this is the other kind of quantitative frame that I use. So they say that only 95% of people are not in market this quarter. So meaning there's only 5% of people who are actively looking and paying attention when you present the thing that you're sharing, right? So like that's another really big thing. We're like 2 ships passing in the night, and that window has to be perfect. We have to present the right offer at the right time, and then it's gone. So that's why you have to blend. You have to almost blend this evergreen awareness building. You might call it thought leadership. This podcast is a form of that. Or, you're a great writer. I encourage you to write more. Like just writing your thoughts down and sharing them. That's like letting the market know that you're here. And then that very narrow window, that 5%, is really when someone would say yes. I mean, they might say yes to a whole bunch of other things. Yeah, I'll come to your webinar, or I'll come to your dinner, or yeah, I'll grab a drink with you. But only 5% of people are actually in market ready to buy.
Interesting. So build the top of the funnel. So Matt, what are you like? Where would you start? Like, let's say you're, kind of just waking up and you've just played with. I saw Lloyd Blankfein the other day on a podcast. I can't remember who was interviewing him, but Lloyd Blankfein is no longer actively involved, running Goldman Sachs today. So his view was like, well, I'm getting great search results with ChatGPT or Grok or whatever.
Yep.
And I'm doing this new stuff, and yes, it's making stuff easier, but I have no idea. I'm not running a company that's, in the thick of this right now. So, where do you start? Like, if you're just looking at this stuff, and you want to learn, where do you start?
The best analogy is, I would say AI is like, and no offense to interns. I mean, you could, maybe it's an intern that is also a Nobel laureate, right? So it's like, it's that level of genius, but it's like a fawn who's trying to gather its balance. So I think that's like that juxtaposition is necessary. This is like one of the at least during our time, I believe it's the,
I say it's like Einstein in your pocket with the EQ of a 12-year-old.
Beautifully said. Yeah, you said it better than me. But that's great. So you have to almost imagine like this thing has no context on your business. And you might disagree, but to me, whether you're a Microsoft Copilot user, whether you're a X Grok user, whether you're a Anthropic Claude user, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, I'm sure Apple has something, Google Gemini, right? Those are like the big LLMs that are out there. I'm LLM agnostic, right? I think they all have the utility. I can tell you how I use all of them for different specific use cases. But what's most important is choose yours. Dedicate, this might sound extreme, but you really have to kind of work with this thing just like you would work with a new employee for 100 hours. I know that sounds like really a lot and overwhelming. When I say work with, I'm saying use speech to text, do a brain dump, ideate. It doesn't even matter, because I think a lot of people think, well, it has to be like a massive business process that I'm retooling. I think it's fine to say, hey, I want to go to the park with my kids. Help me dream up what's possible. And you'll see, you might think, oh yeah, it's going to tell you to like bring a ball and play soccer. But no, it could map the entire park and create a scavenger hunt, and then a storybook when they're tired to read in the shade with them. So there's no other way but to try it. So I think, to your point, yes, you have like this Nobel laureate Einstein, but an EQ of a 12-year-old is a beautiful analogy. Almost like it's an intern's first day, and you need to kind of direct them, I think, is a critical frame. So we can get more specific if helpful.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll tell you, personally, I have all kinds of automated things happening every day, scraping different or looking at different news articles or posts by people that I think are smart, and compiling those for me so I can read them quickly. I mean, it's a massive lever. And of course, in our business, just trying to reduce any sort of business redundancy, any sort of, data entry, any sort of preparation, anything like that. It's a massive, massive lever. And I totally agree with you. I think the best way to do it is just to kind of get started and try it out. So Matt, can
we talk about that real quick? I want to like really drill down to that one example, because I think I want to make it very, very clear how you would, in a stepwise way, create a personalized news source that's delivered, 5 a.m. on your desk. Like, let's talk about that.
I just use Claude Cowork. I'm not a genius, so I just build a workflow in there and specify what I want it to do, where I want it to look. Yep. And it gets better over time, every day as I train it. And, definitively I am able to get to more information more quickly from people that I think are intelligent, and also find new sources, and it's, that specific example is pretty easy to set up. It might sound overwhelming, but, very easy. You just, and that's a huge time saver. A big part of our job, I think, is being up to speed on information and the market and understanding where things are at. And if I can do that more quickly, that's great.
Yeah, I think let's, if it's worth spending 100 seconds on explaining that, even like removing all the jargon and explaining that, even in an elementary phase. I think that's important. Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So he mentioned Claude is all the rage. I think maybe their Super Bowl commercials really kicked off Claude into the zeitgeist, or them being, tagged by the Pentagon as a supply chain risk. Like those are, so Claude is a tool similar to ChatGPT, known as a chat interface that was built by Anthropic. Anthropic was started by a gentleman who peeled away from Sam Altman. I don't know how many years ago, 5+ years ago. And so they have a competing chat bot. So think of like Claude is analogous to ChatGPT, chat interface. Then Claude launched something called Claude Cowork. And Cowork is really the first taste that we've seen, at least from Anthropic, where you have an autonomous or an agentic experience, meaning I would say, like Evan said, hey, I want this news source gathered and organized in a certain way. It wouldn't just give you the answer. It would say, like, give me a couple minutes, and then it would go stitch together 50 different steps or more, even 1,000 steps to go find those news sources and organize it in the way that he wants. And then there's a third option, which is called Claude Code, which is really for coders. Cowork is a wrapper on top of Claude Code, which just helps us better organize things. So in the case that he just described, you can't just say, hey, go do this thing. You would have to give it.
This would take a human being all day to do.
Yes.
Easily.
Well, you got to read it. You got to think. You got to organize it. Where does this go? How do I bucket it? Is it relevant? How do I stitch it back to the thing?
And then every day I, can improve that and train it to do it, to iterate better tomorrow. And it runs automatically, and it actually runs at 8 a.m. So
yeah,
I don't know how long it takes to do the research. It could take an hour. I don't know, but
yeah, he's sharing a couple things. So number one, now it understands what's the objective. So like, what's the target? So when you're dealing with AI, you have to kind of let it know where it's starting, like back to the bookend analogy, like where is it starting, or the mushy middle? And then what does good look like? And it might produce something and it's like, that's kind of off target. No, get it a little bit closer here. And you have to kind of retrain it. No, that's the double bullseye. Good job. Or here's what good looks like. So the reason I'm sharing this is because people are still confused. There's something called, he referenced tasks, and there's something called skills. These are all under the, each of these LLMs has their own form of this. In Claude, a skill would be like, okay, as opposed to teaching it every time, here's the format that I want and here's how you execute it. It's basically like an SOP, right? Here's the standard operating procedure of what I need you to do every day at 8 a.m. So it's like instructions, okay? And then when you say a task, that is a time-bound SOP. So meaning, just if I just ask you to do this thing, it would produce the result in whatever, 10, 20 an hour. But if you say do it, it needs to be up to date. So gather all this information and deliver it at 8 a.m. Now it understands, okay, now it's kind of calendared. So those are just important nuances that after explaining to, my friends and family, that's helpful frame.
And then I think what really got the internet freaked out maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago was when Claudebot, Moltbot, whatever, OpenClaw gave it a soul, right? A soul file and a little bit more of a personality, and that was a little bit odd. So, all right, Matt, let's kind of pull things together here.
Yep.
Tell people, where to find out about you and what you're doing with your company.
Yeah, I think the best place is LinkedIn. People say that's a 24/7 networking event. I don't know if anybody who wants to go to a 24/7 networking event. I see it much more like a neighborhood. And that's the vibe, no pun, but that's the vibe that I think about, right? Like, not that anybody told me to be the greeter at Walmart or Target, but that's how I'm thinking, right? I just think that's where the 95% in my brain shows up, which is I might never be able to work with these folks, but I want to be supportive. Not that everyone has to be like a cheerleader type creature like me, but I am rooting for folks. I want to see them win. So that's the framework that I use. You could just find me, Matt Savarick, at LinkedIn. Feel free to call me. This might be dangerous to give people my phone number, but another piece of the puzzle that is really important to me is mindset and mental health. I know people are going through it. I just lost a client of mine.
Oof.
And yeah, everyone uses the F word. I'm fine. I wouldn't believe them, and I would barge into their life and make sure that they are okay, and just be there for one another. So my phone number is 404-387-9850. If you have young people in your life who need support, who need some, who probably need a little bit of direct speak, right? Like my style is always high expectation, high support. I expect you to work hard. I expect you to take risks. I expect you to have self-belief, and I will support you in that way. So I know we're wrapping up. I have one more little nugget. Did I have another couple minutes to talk about a nugget?
Go ahead. Yeah, by all means.
There's one more nugget that is I think similar to you. You might be looking at different nooks and crannies of the internet than I am in terms of for your business. One thing that was very clear. So a gentleman that we call Uncle G, Grant Cardone, was in the audience, a guy named Hormozy, a guy named Gary V, a woman named Cody Sanchez, Stephen Bartlett, Bieber was there. All of these people, Mr. Beast was in the audience. There was, I think this was Q3 or Q4 of last year, there was a celebrity philanthropic soccer tournament, US, UK. So it was half footballers, soccer experts, and half celebrities. And the reason I bring it up is because you were kind of teasing at this idea of trust. How do you build trust? Well, the people whose job it is to build a brand, like the folks that I just mentioned, right? A lot of them are superstars as a consequence of using social media and articulating their thoughts and sharing it. This, I believe, is still the golden age of organic social media, meaning you can grab a camera and a mic like this, or just a camera like this, and yap into it. As long as you have your point of view and some thoughts, you can build an audience. And all of these people, and there are many other celebrities who witnessed this, but they all witnessed the same thing. So they thought they were going to announce on both sides, the US and the UK soccer team, they thought they were going to announce the most popular people first. So the people with the biggest audience, so think like movie stars and music stars, so like Ariana Grande, who has hundreds of millions of followers. They thought by announcing her first, like the A-listers, they would get the biggest fanfare. Then they would announce the short form kind of TikTokers, YouTube shorts, reels, etc. Then they'd announce the long form, podcasters, YouTubers, and then they'd announce the Twitch streamers.
Right.
But the opposite thing happened, right? Even though the cumulative amount of followership was announced first, there were the most fans, literal fans, for the A-list. Hey, Ariana Grande, welcome. And there was a woo. Right. And then they announced the short form, right? Because they had the second biggest kind of volume audience. Woo. The third was the podcasters, YouTubers. Woo. And then everyone witnessed the same thing. And it was both for the US and the UK. When they talked about, when they introduced the streamers, oftentimes gamers, the audience went bananas, but they had one 1,000th of the cumulative followership.
Interesting.
But the fanfare was deafening. Why? Because this idea of this is not necessarily live, but and there is some interactivity to it. Removing the distance between the facade. So a lot of times people put up some like marketing assets, which we all can tell it's a marketing asset, right? You kind of have to do that, but you also have to balance some of like this humanity. So I agree with you. Relationships matter, but how do you grab a camera and create depth of relationship? The two words that the biggest players in the space are thinking about are live and interactive.
Interesting.
So, an event is an example of that. That is live and interactive. But how do you use digital to do that? I mean, going live is one way. I don't know if you've seen what Bieber has been doing on Twitch. He's kind of doing a deconstructed podcast experience where he's just recording his living room, and he has people show up. They're playing pool. They're hanging out. They're talking. They're dancing. They're singing. They're tinkering on puzzles. So that's when you ask where the pockets and where's the proverbial puck going. This idea of live and interactive seems to be what.
So again, that just
really
goes back
build
to
depth.
the relationship business. Again, our business of commercial real estate finance is relationships really matter. And that's building a true relationship. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, anything else?
Take care of yourself, get some sleep, move your body, call your mom, all the basics.
Cool. All right. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate you, man. Take care.